going back to your journey,
Yes.
that so I don't know how long that time frame was. I don't think you shared when you were, obviously you didn't have the checkbook out and just could write one
Right.
check. So there probably was some type of annuity that had to kick in until it paid it somewhere. Not looking to get into that. That's personal.
Okay.
But that journey was that a year or two that you were in the process of acquiring, controlling interest of Lancaster Landscaping?
Yeah, I would say it took about a 4-year period, 4 or 5-year period. That's to be fair.
Okay.
Just the initial, drafting up all of the legal
Mhm.
documents and everything, and everybody agreeing to it, that, added a little bit more time there. But overall, I would say 5 years.
Okay. So during that, and I would probably say let's hone in the first couple of years because that probably was the most stressful in a sense of, can you do this? There's a long time ahead of you. What are some of the things that, if you were to think back then, that kept you going? I mean, you shared with us that you had 2 young children, so you had a family, you had bills to pay, you had things to do, and then you were trying to establish yourself as a leader in
Absolutely.
the business. Like, what were some of the things that, if you remember, that kind of really drove behind that?
So you pointed on this like before. Growing up, I came from a really, really strong family, and both of my parents worked, and I saw that wonderful work ethic in both of them. And my mom was a strong woman, and I idolized her for it. And so I always knew I wasn't going to be that, country club mom sitting by the pool. Like, I wanted to get something done. And throughout, unfortunately, my mom passed away, but my father is my biggest supporter and helps guide me. I always call him all the time, but helps guide me through these things. And he talks me off the ledge sometimes and says, "You can do this, Adrienne. It's not that difficult. Let's do A, B, and C." And he helps me organize it. But so not only my family and my wonderful husband, who's been completely supportive, and in times, that my kids are sick, he owns his own business and he works from home, and so he's like, there to help support, where sometimes that would fall back on the female, right?
Mhm.
And so he has also been extremely supportive in this. And then when it came down to the finances, that was a hard discussion, because you're trained to, the minute your kids are born, you start socking away all of this money for their college education. And if you have more children, then you have to get a bigger house, and all of those were undue stresses. My husband had this goal, I had this goal, we made it work, and now we're here and we're very happy.
Right. So it sounds like in everyone's lives, right? There's unexpected. I call it gravity. The unexpected that you can't control, and then there's what can you control, and then there's the living expenses, right? And those all play a part. But clearly, it sounds that your influence came from starting with both your mom and dad with their work ethics and how they raised and influenced you, and then finding like-minded people around you in your journey, including your partner, your husband, right? At the same, happen to be that he's in the same kind of boat in a sense of owning his own business. So those probably have good conversations, but probably times where you both want to just say, "I'm done talking," you know, enough is enough. Like, that's always we talk about kind of, and that's a journey in itself, to balance all that. So kudos to you. And I know it's not an easy journey, and it's probably every day it's still something that you're learning and moving through.
And I would like to also add that I had some great mentors throughout my progression into this role. And I still rely on a lot of their advice. And I think that anybody that you meet in the business world, you have something to take away from everybody. And I've really, really learned so much from people. I mean, you are a great example of that. And Jen, you know.
No, thank you. And it's so important, you know, either some people call it coaching, others call it mentors, they're all the same. You know, one thing I feel is so important, no matter what position you hold and where you sit within the ladder of opportunity of ranking within the company you may be in. I inspire all and really encourage, I should say, encourage all that you really do need that. And there's mentors that come and go too, and then there's ones that stay long term. But all of them are the opportunity and how you choose to be a good listener. So, you know, part of your success is clearly, you know, you being open-minded, right? Are you genuinely staying curious as you're developing your business? The minute we kind of feel we've seen it all, that's when the foundation starts to get a little bit weaker. Doesn't necessarily mean it'll implode, but it should be every day. Is there something out there that I learned today, or can I learn? And just being open to when it comes. So it clearly sounds your foundation and the foundation that you built upon that, I'll say with your mom and dad, continues to build it for you. So it's great to hear all that. Jenny, how about you? What during the tough times, and I know tough times come and go for our entire lives, but during the tough times in the early stages, you know, and I'm going to get into both of you as female leaders, how did this affect you? But not yet. I want to just get like, what were some of the things that were driving you to get through those tough times?
I think I have the family that's behind me, right? And I was able to move forward. It was a source of strength and also, a source of concern. You know, if I fail, I could take my whole family down with me. So I had some real motivation to make it succeed. And the only way I knew to do that was to educate myself. So whenever I got nervous or didn't know something or whatever, I would be like, well, I have to learn this. Like it's not an option. And so I tend to lean into a problem, and I've tried to make myself comfortable with being uncomfortable. Right. So if I'm doing that, that means I'm pushing forward. And in my experience, whenever I got comfortable, like, oh, we're good, something fell apart. So I was like, oh no, can't do that anymore. So it's always this lean in, what's next? How can we do better? You know, some people at the company, mostly my brother, jokes, he's like, you're never happy. And I'm like, I'm actually a happy person. I'm never satisfied. Right? I always think we can do it better in terms of whether it's our quality of work or how we're treating our customers, how we're treating our staff. I'm always going to want to do better. And I think that's what motivates me is I don't want to be the same person today that I was yesterday. And I hope tomorrow I can be even better, whether it's this much or this much. You know, I just want to make sure that I'm moving forward. I see that as my role is to always push. So.
Yeah. So it seems, you know, again, in both of your cases, family plays a big part. I know in many others, it could be different. You know, family now becomes who your influencers are. And so it could be anybody, but in your two cases, I could see where the family has played a big part. But what I like that stood out, Jenny, is, you know, the example you gave your brother is, hey, not being satisfied and being perceived as not happy is two different things. You know, you can have a really great feeling about the day, but if you feel there was more you could do and more you can improve, that's really just putting it in its separate verticals to kind of view how you want to take your leadership, the company's brand, the people that chose to work for your company to that next level. And again, I feel that companies' cultures, right? Every company has a culture. If they either plan on it or work hard on creating a culture, or they have nothing to do with it, a culture happens because it's what the feel of it is. The end of the day is people do want to work for people that they feel there's a level of trust. And trust doesn't mean you're right all the time. Trust doesn't mean you don't make mistakes. That's the human side of it. But trust is overall, do they have our best interest? And that's a challenging part as leaders to make sure that that's balanced, because some people may see one way of approaching it and might be different from you as the leaders taking a different. But that culture creates, the organization and the direction it goes in. And you can clearly see with both of you that there's values there. And I think another thing that, I was, pulled in like a magnet when I met both of you was just kind of your passion on how you describe your business and how you got there. And again, you can see that. So I want to pivot, get a little bit more under the hood here, and ask both of you. You're in an industry predominantly in the community association management industry that gears to, different types of real estate verticals, from condos, portfolio, HOAs, to mid-rises, high-rises, large-scale communities, highly amenitized, active adult communities, all the above. And you're up against your competitors in each of your respective, skills, from landscaping to restoration and contracting and cleaning. So you have your competitors that are fighting to get to the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper, I'll say, are the management companies, but they're the first layer, the most important layer in the sense of entering into the opportunity to provide a service to the actual client we all share, which is the community, driven by board members. And there are different age groups that are on the boards. They're basically, if you are up to date on your maintenance fees, you can qualify for, being on the board. And then you have to get voted in by your fellow residents or board homeowners, and you're on the board. It doesn't matter what experience you bring, you're on the board. So that's one group of clients. And on average, there's seven leaders on a board. And then you have the management company. Could be the manager, and your supervisor. That also is another client, if you will. And then you have the competitors you're up against. So pricing plays a part, quality of service, consistency, reputation, brands, all the above. But I think there's another huge layer here that both of you had to run up against. Is it's predominantly in both of your spaces driven by male executives or male owners. So just being a little bit streetwise here, I gotta think you brushed some elbows that pissed people off, or had a lot of nasty things at times. Maybe they said under their breath, or maybe not, maybe direct. How has that journey been? Because this is what really kind of inspires me of Jet. You just plowed through this and really went up against. So Adrienne, we'll start with you in a sense of how did you find it in the beginning? So you went through your journey with us, you shared it, I should say, on, now you've got the company, you've got a 5-year payout, whatever, but you're the boss, you're the CEO. Now you're like, great, big accomplishment. Family loves it. Everybody's giving you the big kudos. And now you're like, oh God, I got to make money. And I'm going up against my competitors who are, I have to assume, all, if not all, majority male driven. What was that like your first couple of years?
It's difficult. I did find a lot of the times that I would go onto a site or go on a walkthrough, and I don't know if it was intentional or not, but I found like they would ask me all these questions just to see if they could throw me under the bus. I hate to say that, but it happened a lot. And I knew my business. I knew what I was doing. So over time, that kind of got shot down quickly. And that's on the competitor side. When working with other board members or other managers, I found that people, when I would go into presentations, were kind of like, it was refreshing for a woman who knew her business, inside and out, and being able to be put on the spot and answer any question. I felt like every time I would go into one, I could see that I really connected with, 4 out of the 7 people there. And remember, in my previous company, I would go in for these marketing pitches, and it's just like, oh, okay, thanks for coming. And when I would go in as the CEO, people started listening more, and they took me a little bit more seriously. And they knew that I could provide the same, if not better, service to my clients because I had an insane attention to detail, right? And so I think that it is, I've seen both sides of the progression of being this female owner. At first, I had to win over the guys that worked for me, and also get my competitors to respect what like my visions or my recommendations. And over time, it's been happening.
Yeah, so I would think, right? You walk in, so I'm envisioning this, but I could be off base. So I envision you walk into a presentation and they're bidding out 3, 4, 5 landscaping companies. And now you come in, and there had to be some people that were, a little bit of like, okay, we just had 3 or 4 companies walk in here, and predominantly on the executive, senior executive, the experience, growing up in the business and, learning about the mulch and cutting the grass and kind of what stereotyped at one point a manly kind of role, right? And here you come. And I had to think that were challenges of just you proving that just as much and you're that much experience, but also I think, did it get old to you sometimes? Like, in other words, it had a deep down, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I got to feel like you had to be pissed at times. Like you had to be sitting there going like, God damn it, why don't they respect me for what I know and stop looking? Like, it had a somewhere you wanted to jump up on the table and say, cut this out. Like, I know exactly. Like, did that happen, or did you feel that ever, or am I just be more
absolutely dramatic? There was a handful of times that I was just like, are you kidding me? But in all the other times, and I think it made me stronger because I knew if I just got that like sense when I walked in that I really needed to make sure that they knew, my past history and my education, and I'm a master gardener, and so on and so forth. And so I started changing that narrative kind of, and putting things in different positions when speaking, and it's just been working now. Now it's like, oh, okay, she knows what she's talking about.
Yeah, no, it's terrific. And I want to make a statement that I don't have the statistics on every landscaping company in the United States and what the ownership split of, male to female. But I know in our industry, at least what I see it's been, driven more on the male, clearly the male side. But I love that, like this goes down to, and this is why I think it's so important to the people that choose to listen to the podcast is, everyone comes to the table with some type of adversity or some type of barrier and challenge that they could be. Some might be they're really young and people aren't taking them serious. Others may have other, areas of where the expertise might be flipped. You see people in HR, and the HR industry is predominantly female driven. And when you get a male person in there, you kind of like, whoa, what's up with that? But like at the end of the day, as people, if we just really just become a bit more humbled in life and stop being a bit judgmental and start looking and saying, you know what? Yeah, okay, I'll be honest, it catches my eye. But the next thing I want to do is, what is the experience? And are we being fair with asking the experience? I have to think, with both of you, that people may have drilled further down to really validate the experience versus because of, the competition you're up against. Where to me, if your company's marketing, social media is sharing what you've done and how long you've been in business and who the testimonials and the referrals come from, that's one base of it. The other is then, the quality of people you have in your company, and then ultimately how you as the leader carry the torch. But I would have to think that probably had some challenges too, because people, maybe went a little bit further. And I could be reading into it wrong, but I would think that some would want to read, go deeper in to make sure it's really known, unless that didn't happen. But I would assume more questions you were asked on kind of how experienced you were.
Absolutely. 100%. And, I think the toughest at first, in my first year of doing this, was really winning over my staff and them understanding that I would be their greatest advocate and I would look out for them and make sure that this was an environment that they would want, or that would attract employees and also retain them, right? We have several employees that have been with us for 30 years, and I just want to continue that. They were kind enough to give me, this is off the topic story, so you can cut it if you want. My first Christmas party or holiday party at the company, they all threw in money, and they got me my first pair of Timberlands because I was wearing like these little ballet shoes to walk through. Can't do that.
I love it.
They got me a really nice, and then this, I'm gonna get this for you, but
go ahead. I love it.
They just gave me this last Christmas, and it's,
oh my God,
lady. So I really appreciate my guys and women that work for me, but it's very sweet.
Yeah, and I'm going to go a little bit deeper next round on that as well, because I do agree with you that it does start with your team being supported and supporting you. So I want to get a little bit under the hood on that as we come back. But Jenny, what was your experience? Because I think yours is even a notch above the landscaping. I went to an all boys Catholic school, high school, right? And, I think back, I'm still great friends with a lot of, I played sports. Like, there's a lot of conversations when, you're around guys that flow a certain way. And, obviously, young people are going to be the way they are, as that's part of growing up. But, you're in a real, like if you go old school construction, the lunchbox, the black coffee, and they're this, again, I am stereotyping, but it is a little bit of but it is a male driven, industry, of course. What what were you going through, and how did you battle, those changes that you had to kind of, put your flag in and saying, hey, we're equal here, and I could do exactly the same amount. Like, what was that like for you?
I've never worked outside of a male-dominated industry, so I'm sure every industry has their unique challenges. I was always I'm always the only girl on job sites, right? Always. And I was assumed that I was the girl that was there taking notes, or I'd be lucky if I get a handshake, that type of thing. And then when they figured out I was the CEO, they thought I was just like for tax breaks, right? You're just like, oh my goodness. So it was having to prove your resume over and over and over again. And just the general lack of trust. You're like, why? Why is that? Why can't you trust me even once you know my resume? I think those were just the daunting challenges. And I was very fortunate that I have a very strong network of really good friends, and I didn't have to prove myself to my staff as much, because they were coming whether they liked it or not. They were related, some of them. So I had a good backing, and I learned early on not to let anyone determine my worth. I get to do that. But it was always so frustrating just to have to prove your resume, and that you were always doubted for no reason. So it just pushed me to make sure I knew my stuff. If I heard a word that I didn't know, I made sure I learned it next time, so I wouldn't be in that situation again, and I could speak about it. I think as a woman in construction, I think I've been successful because I have a lot of empathy. I definitely try to be humble, for sure. And I want to help, right? That's my nature, is I want to help, and I actually like building. I love playing with Legos. I love doing all that. So I think that is what was allowed me to be successful in this. But there were some really interesting times that we had. We had to do this construction job that had multiple construction defects, right? And so I'm like, I want to say 33, 35, somewhere right around here. So not only am I a girl in construction, I'm young, but I know what I'm doing, right? Guys, I got this. So we're doing this construction project, and there's multiple defects. They have some fire code issues, sound issues, and water infiltration issues. And so construction defects can be a one-off, or they could have been repeated over multiple buildings. Well, these were repeated. There were homeowners living in there, and they had signs up on the windows. And we got called because we're known to handle these type of headaches and these multi-trade repairs. A builder isn't very good on that side of it. So we come in there and, figured out the fire code repair, and figured out the sound, the acoustical repair that needed to happen. But then we get to the water infiltration. And they're convinced it's just this one little spot above a window. And I'm standing in a room with 10, maybe 12 other guys. Youngest one is still 10 years older than me. And I'm by myself with my thermal camera and all the cojones I can try to get for that day. And they're like, oh, it's just this small repair. Go ahead. Now we need you, Jenny, go ahead and fix it. And I knew that this wasn't the only leak. And I also knew that I don't get many grace. When we mess up, immediately my gender is going to get called into question, that I didn't know what's going on, right? And this project was high profile in that it needed to be repaired. And if I repaired it, no one would know I was there. But if I mess it up, everyone's going to know SC companies, and not in a good way. And so they're wanting me to rush through this and get this project done. But I'm convinced that we do not know all the leaks. And they were like, you need to do it. And I had to say no. And I can hear under the breath every name that they can think of, and they're frustrated because there's no one else that's going to do this job. And here this 35-year-old girl is like putting her foot down and saying no. And now I'm sweating because I'm like, oh God, I hope I'm right. Like, I know I'm right. But you're doubting yourself when you're in front of all these guys. And we had to take off the whole front of the building and do a water test. And I was like, well, if there's no leaks, we'll pay for the stone. So we take off the whole front of the building and we do the water test. Thank God that thing leaked 4 more times. Like, it was just one of those instances where, and they're like, you're telling me we don't know what we're doing. And I'm like, I'm not telling you don't know what you're doing. I'm telling you, I know what I'm doing. If we can be together, that's fine. And they're like, how did you know that? And I said, well, I looked across the street where you're building them, and I can see you're not doing the flashing right the whole way down. Oh, well, you probably want to fix that, or I'll come around to them when we're done. That's fine. But it was just one of those instances where you had to, like, I know my stuff. I need to make sure I assert myself. I had to protect the company because it was so easy just to get pushed into doing something that wasn't what you were comfortable doing in those situations, and to push back on those guys. I just remember, like, when I got into the car, I was just like, okay, okay, glad now we can actually go do the repair that I'm comfortable doing and that we can send the company to, and all of that stuff. But it was a little nervous, for a little while. But to my knowledge, those buildings haven't leaked again. So
that's terrific. And I preface again, people that are listening, it's not that I feel there's strong stereotypes now than there were, 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And it's not everybody, but it's, the clear point here is to say that the facts are that that's how the industry is right now in that we work with. And this is an opportunity to inspire and encourage any leader in any area that you're in, whatever challenges it might be, that, a lot of hard work and what I feel and see is you both really grinded. You had the early stage grinding to learn the business, commit to your team, commit to the vision of what you want to establish, including dealing with the hurdles that were there and the opportunities too. There's great opportunities on other sides too. So there's the pros and cons, right? And in life, we all have them. I don't care, male, female, what role, what position. This is really all for anyone, not to look at it just specifically. We're just using this as one example, but you can change it to an industry that's female dominated and a male person trying to get into it. You can change it any way you want. It's what's the common denominator, and what I see with both of you that you have is grit. And I think in any leadership, like quality, the grit has to, it is game time, right? What am I going to do to win? And you probably have, I know, at least I'll speak for myself, I have a lot more losses than wins. But like baseball, you're up 1,000 times and you get 300 hits. And if you can do that 20 years in your career, you're going to the Hall of Fame. So it's only 30% of the hits. Now, I don't know what the percentage is, but I could tell you I have a lot. My failures were the ones that were key learning points for me, because it's easy to succeed and take all the glory or take the success with it or the compliments of the teams and all of it. It's what do you do in critical thinking times, in really critical moments as leaders? What do you do to get through a tough moment like we all did as a society? 2.5 years of COVID. That was a real test. And it was very, very difficult, along with all the other things that played into it, from elections, the politics, the money, the economy. This plays in, and here we are, we're just a bunch of humans trying to figure this shit out. We're getting thrown at all these different things. It is the grit. It is the resources you lean into. It is, in a sense, and I'm not touching religion in this, but there is a level of faith. And faith doesn't necessarily mean it has to be religiously driven. For some people it is, but faith is the belief, what you believe, how you get through those times. And you can clearly see on how you both have been explaining your journey and your successes and your hurdles that you had to jump up against, is that constant kind of push.